This is a conference, but it's a conference in a very different way. It's a conference where we are going to be talking about the art of listening, about the Song Collectors Collective, which is the most poorly named collective there is, because it only describes a millifraction of what this strange enterprise that most of you probably have no clue what it is about. And I am going to tell you a little bit about that at first. My name is Sam Lee, by the way. I live here. In fact, that's my flat up there, hence why we're here. Why this church? I can fall out of bed into it. I received an email yesterday from somebody who may be in the audience, I don't know, but I'm going to start with this little opening line, which was somebody titled Song Collectors Conference. Help, I'm old, I don't understand electronic systems, I need a voice. And I absolutely loved that, because I think in many ways, age-related or unrelated, this is a project that is about listening to voices and stories and songs and myths and laws and essentially culture, root culture, unheard culture that is endemic throughout this land, every land, is on our doorsteps and is very much often unrecognised, unheard, and possibly lost and forgotten as those keepers of those stories pass on. Me being quite young and excited about some of those stories and songs that I've already heard in my lifetime, and aware that some of the lifetimes that they are part of are not long left for this world, and some have run out, are not captured, not recognised, not respected, and kept alive. There's a great quote that I love to recite very often, which is a sort of a misquote from Gustav Mahler, of all people, funnily enough, which is, tradition is tending the flame and not worshipping the ashes. And the way I see it is, and the way I hear it, is that there is a landscape of little flames, and big flames, and bright flames that need tending to. And that our job as, I imagine all of us as lovers of indigenous culture in one way or another, are probably, all collectively would feel the sadness of when we hear a flame has gone out or been lost. And many flames live and die without ever being recognised beyond their own realms. And this conference, it's a terrible word, that sounds so formal, is about exploring the ideas, the ideas of exploration of those stories. And I'm really pleased that lots of people who are coming today, who are here today, have had a great kind of interaction with that world, or themselves are tenders, keepers of a flame in one way or another, storytellers, singers, part of that oral tradition. Now I'm really thrilled that there is this long line of brilliant people who have been tricked by me into coming down on account of all this. No, I'm people whose work I have either recently or for a long time been inspired myself, and have been part of my journey as a song collector, so to speak, a collector of voices. And it would be really great to introduce, if we could introduce ourselves so you know what is on offer, because you may or may not have read the list of different panels, but we're going to break down into different groups, parallel talks, and go into the minutiae of some of the aspects of documentation, recording, collecting, storing, repatriation, returning, recycling, upcycling, the continuation of this world, and how we keep it going and alive, and as rich as it has been, but evolving. I'm very interested in conservation and not preservation. This is not a preservation society in any way. This is about keeping the ground fertile for next generations, so that the wonderful things that we've encountered in our lifetime that have survived will be there for the ears of people beyond. I'm talking very nebulously, I realised, kind of, but the Song Collectors Collective does have a specific kind of set of remits, which maybe we'll talk about in a little bit. I think I'm going to shut up and ask these guys here if they would like to introduce themselves, say what they're going to talk about, the bits that they're going to be talking about, so you guys get a bit of an idea of what's on offer and what you may like to go to. I know it's going to be a bit of a decision. Should we start over on this side with the ladies?
Yeah, sure. Well, my name is Laura Smith. Well, I guess I've been asked here today because of my work now. I'm actually working as a librarian at the English Folk Dance and Song Society.
Excuse me, can't hear.
Sorry, I'll speak louder. Yeah. So I was just saying, my name is Laura Smith, and I've been asked here today, I believe, because I'm working now as a librarian for the English Folk Dance and Song Society. So I'm dealing with a lot of material and collections that come in all the time. Like the current project that we're actually working on, we're working on a digitisation project to make these collections available through an online media and online platforms. So in my talk this morning, which has a really long title, it's Making Collections That Last, Examples of Disseminating Material via Digital Platforms and Building Context Around Collections Once They've Been Made.
Wow.
So this morning I'm just going to be talking in that panel, and I'll be drawing very much on my own experience of what I've learned in my current role and how that should hopefully help to influence you as collectors, those people going out into the field, because what you collect very much impacts on what we can do with that material. So that's what I shall be talking about. Hand over to Amy.
Do I need to stand up?
Yeah.
Okay. I'm Amy Wilson. I'm here on behalf of Wren Music, which is a community folk arts organisation based in Devon. I'm Paul Wilson's daughter, who's the founding man. And he made a collection of reel-to-reel tapes in the 70s on Dartmoor. And Wren are also custodians of the Bear and Gold folk song collection of kind of 600 written pieces, both of which are in the process or have just been digitised. And I'm going to be talking about that in the same session with the long title that Laura remembered.
Peter Shepherd's my name. I became interested in folk song rather a long time ago, at the time of Lonnie Donegan and so on, as many people who entered the folk scene of the 60s did. I started playing guitar, I learnt songs. And then I went to university in Scotland, in St Andrews, born and brought up in Gloucestershire. When I went up there, I quickly got involved in folk song club at the university, and very soon met traditional singers such as Jeannie Robertson, the great ballad singer from Aberdeen, and the Stewart family of Blairgowrie, who you may have heard of, Alec and Sheila Stewart, Alec and Bell, and Sheila, the daughter. Sheila's recently retired from singing. She's the last surviving member of that. These are traveller singers, and the existence of a traveller tradition of enormous value was discovered in the 1950s by Hamish Henderson, working in the School of Scottish Studies in Edinburgh. And he discovered that the Scottish travellers had ballads and traditional songs and repertoire and stories, folk tales, that no one realised they had. So when I met those people, that inspired me to continue being interested in folk song in a more deeper manner. I went and visited the Stewarts and so on, and eventually went collecting in Ireland, collected songs in Scotland from travellers, went to Canada, collected songs there. I was just interested in discovering what people had wherever I met them, including back down in my home territory of Gloucestershire, which I'll talk. That's the sort of thing I'll talk about, some of the songs and how I came to come. Thank you.
I'm Simon Evans. I also got involved with folk a long, long time ago, probably a decade after Peter here, because in the 60s, late 60s, early 70s, that kind of folk revival was going on at that time. I spent a lot of time in the 1970s recording and documenting traditions in Kent, particularly mummers' plays, whole traditions of mummers' plays. along the Down Valley and in northwest Kent. Through that work, I actually got more and more interested in contextualising this material, I suppose. I was saying, well, I've got the songs, dance, music, these are all performing arts. Arts are an cultural expression of who are their cultural expression. And that kind of led me very much into perhaps the politics of culture and to saying, why are some art forms more respected than others? Because certainly in those days, people like the Arts Council and the Arts Establishment have nothing whatsoever to do with folk music. It wasn't considered to be art. As time went by, actually, I got more and more interested in all those areas and the people. So when I went to talk to people, I got more interested in their lives, their communities, and what was the context for these songs? What's the context for these dances? For the last 25, 30 years, I've been very much involved with the Gypsy traveller population in Kent in a wide variety of ways. I'm actually a filmmaker, a radio producer, a writer and a photographer. A lot of the work which I do in the Gypsy population is just looking at the culture generally. And so when I'm talking today, actually, it's going to be slightly tangential, I suppose, to the main business of the day, because there is a lot of misunderstanding around, we say gypsy, that means something different to everybody, or say traveller, that means something different to everybody. So what I hope to do is just to clarify some of that. So mine's been more of almost like a history lesson, highly illustrated. I've got a lot of photographs and bits of film, historic material. So just looking at what we mean by gypsies and travellers, and then maybe moving on to see how that culture retains and perpetuates certain folk traditions.
Hi everybody, my name is James MacDonald. I think what interested me initially in collecting folk songs was just to find new, different songs to sing myself, and I'd be mostly interested in Irish songs, but obviously living in England, getting very interested in English songs as well. And last year, Sam and I made 2 trips as part of a project funded by the Irish Arts Council to record songs in the Irish traveller communities in England, Wales and in Ireland, a lot in my home county of Wexford in the southeast. And we've got dozens of really old traditional songs from from those collecting trips, and we're at a stage now where we're really trying to get people involved in transcribing or editing those songs. So if anybody's interested in that, please get in touch. If you're very new to what traditional ballads are and kind of want to know a bit more about some of the words that pop up or what it all is, the talk that I'm giving at 11:30, I think in this room, Sam, will really just hopefully be a beginner's guide to demystify a lot of stuff around what kind of songs it is that we've been looking for on that trip. Of course, the Song Collectors Collective as a wider project is much more broad, but what is a traditional ballad? How are they transmitted? All that kind of stuff I'll hopefully be able to give a good overview of that in the hour that I've been allocated. But if anybody has any questions throughout the day on that kind of stuff or anything else about the project, feel free to approach me as well. Thanks.
Hi everyone, I'm Paddy Egan. I'm from Wicklow. Grew up in the foothills of the Wicklow Mountains many years ago. Got interested in Irish traditional music from the age of 7. And consequently then, after school, I got into computers, music, and anything to do with the two of them. So this comes at a kind of a crossroads for me. At the moment, I'm studying for a PhD in King's College in London, which involves music and computers together, namely the digital humanities. So today, I'll just talk about basically kind of tracing memory and sound together, building the context with the recordings, and seeing what we can do with collections of music that are available right now today in different institutions and bringing them out to the public and seeing what we can add to it and how we can move on from there. That's it.
Hi, my name's Mike Doherty. I'm the press officer for the Irish Travel Movement in Britain. I also write for the Travellers Times. So I'm kind of here to support Simon with his workshop. And I'm going to be talking about what some of the Gypsy and Traveller organisations out there that are doing, the campaign organisations. I'm going to be talking about some of the media work we've done and about the prejudice in the media and about that programme, I think we know which one, Big Fat Gypsy Weddings. And I'm also going to be talking about my experience of meeting gypsies and travellers during my work. So
Hi everyone, my name is Noel Lovely. I work as an ethnomusicologist and sound curator at the Pitt Rivers Museum in Oxford, which is, for those that don't know, is the University Museum of Anthropology and World Archaeology. And we've got some major collections of big song collections. So I'm interested in field recordings and collections from different areas of sub-Saharan Africa, particularly the Eastern Cape of South Africa and the Central African Republic. Later on, I'm going to give you some examples of some of the work of major collectors, and I work with collectors and also interested in how song collections can remain relevant today, particularly in communities where there isn't necessarily an archiving tradition or even online access or something like that. So how can songs that have been recorded, how can they be useful today, bring political benefit, social benefit, memories, new songs, etc. So talking about that later on. Thank you.
Social side of songs.
Okay. Yeah. We're making up as we go along here. Firstly, thank you all. As you can see, there's an amazing diversity of skills, and I like to think a kind of common line between all of us in the work that we do and our interests. What I think is important to say is that the Song Collectors Collective and what it was set up for on a more kind of specific basis, and the ambitions of this as an organisation still in its kind of fetal stages. This is the third time the Song Collectors Collective has met up. The first two times on a very small basis, just conferring on the kind of the ethics, the protocol of, as you can see, a kind of quite a huge idea that we're trying to get into motion here. The idea really is that we would love you and your friends and legions beyond you, beside you, to be documenting, going out there, recording in the footsteps of a great tradition of collecting, but ultimately with the benefit of technology, or in every possible dimension that the technology can offer, networking, social networking, dissemination of sounds, you know, the ability to transmit and communicate music over long distances, and a technology that is ever more so shared amongst every community. We are building a digital platform as we speak, which will house these offerings, these collections, as a way of it being accessible. And accessibility is, I think, a really important word, and I think something that all of us here, in one way or another, have been working really hard to make our work open to the public in one respect or another. So the Song Collectors Collective is a meeting point where all the industry that can be garnered can be kind of brought together in a central place. Now that is taking shape. There's no obvious way of doing it. Technology is changing as quickly as the landscape is changing and the music. So it's a fluid concept at the moment. But ultimately this day is about empowerment of you guys to learn the skills of how to, where to, why to, who to.
Desmond Tutu.
Yeah, which was the grade I hoped to get at university. So I think there's something very important also that's been brought up lots, and some of you may be wondering why there's such a strong emphasis on the Gypsy Traveller aspect of this conference. Why Gypsy Travellers? I'm not going to say too much because Simon and Michael will be doing an absolute expert kind of insight into that community. But what I'm really pleased to say is that later on at this day we will have representatives, we will have contributions from each member of the primary Gypsy Traveller communities. We have Frida Black, 85-year-old Romany Gypsy, never before sung or talked or, you know, entertained outside of her family, has made a very brave choice to come up today and share her amazing repertoire, life, with us. We have coming all the way down from Aberdeen, Anthony Robertson of the Robertson family that Peter was mentioning earlier. A great, rich family tradition there. Thomas McCarthy, a local Shepherd's Bush-based Irish traveller, terrific singer, intelligent, knowledgeable, researched and passionate man, are all here to give an insight into the riches kept up within that community. And the Song Collectors Collective by no means aims to focus on those people, those families, but certainly for me and James and for many of us here, it's been a rich vein locally. Ridley Road Market, you've probably walked up it many days. I've gone to the market, met an Irish traveller and had them singing over the citrus stall a ballad or two. It's that kind of, it's that present, and they are that present with the riches of their culture. So that's an important part of the work that I see we do. But ultimately, there are so many ways for you guys to be involved. I'm not saying that any of you should be doing everything. There may be a particular aspect of this collective that takes your interest. You may be a storyteller. You may be a singing leader. You may be somebody who's looking for stories as part of a project. Any cause, any reason why you may just have a love of songs or of meeting people. But this is a way of us passing on the expertise and the kind of gleaned knowledge that we've gathered over collective years to kind of help you do it in the most beneficial, safe, and I guess the most, what would be the word? A way that is most respectful to the people in the communities that we may meet, we may encounter. I tell you what I want to ask, maybe a little bit more while we are all together, and this is kind of throwing it out to you guys, is are there any, where have you guys come from? What are your interests? Why have you come here today? What are your skills, and where would you like to develop? This may not be a question you want to answer now. You may want to feed this back to us later, but what's the kind of realm?
And is there anything that really isn't clear either? Does anybody at this point have any questions? I think that's good. Oh, yes, there is a question.
Peter.
Can people hear Peter? Or you're going to have to stand up, Peter. We all have
Sorry,
to do it.
Peter.
I collect music for BBC on occasion, Radio 3 around the world. But I just think while you're here, I think the question of ethics is not one that's maybe going to be covered specifically in any session. So I just wondered what your collective opinions are on kind of song collecting ethics in a digital world, in a digital rights-free environment, and where dissemination, when it's not tracked on a tape anymore, that can be on Facebook, and how that challenge.
This is quite important if you're collecting, to make it clear between yourself and, as folklorists call it, the informant. I don't like the word. The person you're collecting from.
Sorry,
the person
you're not standing up.
the person you're becoming friendly with and you're recording from. It is important that you establish fairly early on in the relationship between you what you're going to do with the recordings you're making, because there's inevitably going to be suspicion, and quite understandably, they may think you're going to make a fortune out of this, and they may never have had anyone come to them previously who's been interested in what they're doing, but they may also have heard of someone who's had songs recorded, and they'll think someone's made a fortune by putting it on a record, and this probably, if a folk singer comes along, records a song from a traditional singer, and then puts it on a record, that traditional singer is going to think that person's making a fortune. They're probably not. But so ethics is important, and it's important to establish a friendly relationship, and it's quite difficult to know how to establish that finally. But you need to get permission. One way to do it is to certainly have to say on the recording that you're making, this is what I'm proposing to do, this is who I'm interviewing myself. So say where you are, who you're recording, and then at the time say, look, I'm proposing that this is for my own personal use. I may sing some of the songs, I may wish to pass this to an archive, which is a good idea. That archive will use it in a sensible way. They won't expect to make a lot of money out of it, but they will be planning to make it available to people. And then you can later go back with a written document to say, look, I'd just like your signature to say that you're happy with this. So ethics is important, undoubtedly. And if what we're all interested in doing is promoting the culture, we want to make these things available. So you've got to make it available in a way that the person who's given you it is going to be happy with.
And just a little thing as well. I mean, I think what Pete has spent many years doing and what I've spent very few years doing are remarkably similar. What has changed is something that you brought up, is the technology has changed, and once stuff gets out on the internet, you can control it a lot less than when it's on a record, even though a CD now could be very easily copied and it's out there as well. And with older informants, and we don't like the word either, we tend to say contributors for anybody that we do record. It sounds less like they're in a police lineup or with a spotlight in their face. It is a challenge explaining to them that stuff will be put online, because a lot of them, I mean, quite frankly, a lot of the people we meet, the good ones, don't really read and write. So, you know, explaining something about Facebook and SoundCloud and digital dissemination and digital repatriation, the kind of very, very complicated stuff I don't bloody understand, you know, and I'm kind of half their age, if not less. That is a challenge, certainly. And explaining that that's going to be made freely available, and trying to sidestep money and saying, look, there's no money in it, nobody's going to make any money, us included, and that's, you know, that's quite simple. You know, some of the projects are funded, but that's, I mean, nobody is ever going to be profiting in any big way from these kind of activities. And making that very clear around very awkward topics of money and where the stuff is going to end up and why we're interested is very, very difficult. A good starting point, I've always found, is just to say that as a singer, I'm interested in singing this stuff. That's very, very reassuring for people. But that won't work for all of us here. You know, I mean, I'm sure there's plenty of people here who are very interested in it just to listen to it, whether it's songs or music or stories. So that's maybe something for each person as an individual, if they were recording a contributor, to have that dialogue, but to get to the bottom of it and explain that it is not profit-led and there's not going to be any kind of nefarious uses of it intentionally. There is always a risk that somebody else will nick it and abuse it, and that's just something we need to police. Isn't it?
Yeah, excellent question. Just add to that a viewpoint from ethnomusicology. So one of the collections I'm going to talk about by music from the rainforests of the Central African Republic, the collector that donated it to us at the Pit Rivers stipulated that any benefit should go back to the community whose music it is. And that's something that we're exploring at the moment. And there's also a big music digitisation project running through the music department at Oxford, which is looking at cross-cultural cases of the impact of digitisation on local musicians in case studies in Kenya, Argentina, and North India as well. This copyright law is different across countries, and so it's kind of looking at how it's impacting on musicians, raising awareness of rights amongst musicians. Some musicians don't know they have rights to recordings, performance and things like this. And it's in a sort of mid-stage at the moment, so the results are still coming, but it's being looked at very closely cross-culturally as well. But yeah, it's a major issue, so thank you.
Yeah. I think if someone was to come up to me and want to record me, I would probably want to know what was in it for me. One of the things that we can say, or we might be able to say, is that this will be recorded and kept, so your children and your children's children have access to like the culture, the songs you're singing today that may or maybe die out. So there's a lot in it for you. That's the kind of angle I'd like to put forward.
I think the experience that James and me had when we were out in Ireland in December and then back in August, we were very shy about getting the microphones out. You know, it's a very sensitive and awkward thing to broach. When we did broach it, there was unanimous, please record my children. Please, they want everything wanted to be recorded. You know, daughter singing Adele to this old song my grandmother used to sing. And there was a real sense while we were out there of that there was a generational shift, and the repertoire that was being sung, even by the 50-year-olds, 60-year-olds, was significantly different to the repertoire of the 70, 80-year-olds, and that there was a stylistic of singing and of telling, and an ability to kind of relay a yarn that was they were aware was not being part. And the young ones were all aware that the best singer in the room was Grandad, even though he was past his prime, or Grandma. They had something special. They had a way of doing it. And we had one very curious moment leaning into a car where a young man in his late 20s had a scratched up CD of recordings that he'd somehow got hold of, made by a great Irish collector called Tom Munnelly of Irish Travellers, these old voices. And he had the CD, it was on its last legs, and he was absolutely treasured these voices. And that CD probably had about 2 weeks left in it, because you could see the pile of CDs in his car, and the treatment they were getting. And that was the kind of a great metaphor for the fragility, in some ways, of these traditions. That once they've gone, they've gone. And I managed to put it on my laptop, import what I could of it, and get it back to them. And all these families are really, really keen to hear these recordings and have them. And I think in many ways it's a gesture that we see as being quite vital to that sense of cultural pride they have. And also, you talk about ethics, how an outsider approaching a community who don't necessarily see the wider context of the family heirlooms, as it were. That actually an outsider coming in, these kind of young kids from London, as it were, has a significant impact. We've luckily seen it for good, but it can not go well, and I think that's it. It's about safety, and it's about making sure that we are all well prepared for the eventuality, because this is exploration. This is in the good old way. We're going out into the field, armed with enthusiasm and hopefully much more. So it's very important that good preparation, and that will be broached in James's talk and many of the talks about the ethics and that sort of thing.
You mentioned before, Sam mentioned earlier about tending the flame and not just kind of worshipping the ashes. And I think, Sam mentioned before about tending the flame and not just worshipping the ashes of the tradition. And I think that you say Grandad's probably the best singer. It's really important not to belittle anything that younger generations are singing as well, because if they've learnt it from Grandad, that tradition is very much still alive. And so maybe it's worth recording the different versions or exploring what the kids are singing as well.
Yeah. And what Sam said as well about us just turning up, or whoever it may be, just turning up, can be a really great boost as well, just in helping them value that stuff. They, not that they don't value it, but it really reinforces that this is very, very special, very, very beautiful music, and it's not just within their family that it's special. There is a huge, look at the many people in this room alone, there is a really, really wide interest in preserving and just enjoying this music that a lot of people find beautiful, and it is threatened, and the fact that it's kind of rare makes it even more beautiful, but it's kind of dangerously rare, and it may not be. Some of these songs will disappear. That's just a fact, but and the singer certainly will. But as much as we can kind of save and share and get out there, the better, really.
To add to that, actually, I'm slightly more optimistic than some of my colleagues, because the reason that Bearing Gold, Cecil Sharp, all these people went out and collected is because, as far as they could see, it was all dying out. And they thought, we're going to write this down before it dies out. And yet Peter will probably concur with me. We go out, you go out, we go out, and actually find people, young people, still singing those same songs. So I would say it's not dying out. So actually, for me personally, I suppose that's why I come at a slightly different point of view, as I'm actually interested in change, not in continuity. I'm interested in changing repertoires. My own grandfather had a repertoire of traditional folk songs, Irish songs, gypsy songs, all kind of mixed in. Now, actually, in repertoires, when I meet young people, they may be singing some old songs, maybe singing some young songs. There's an old gypsy fellow I know in Sussex, they call him the human jukebox. Right, you get round to 5 pallets with him one night and you can still be there at 3 o'clock in the morning and he's still singing. But by that time he's done traditional songs, he's done Beatles songs, he's done Sex Pistols songs, he's done musical songs. It's all in there. And what we have is a tradition of singing. And that's just kind of why I look at it, really. And that's why I get quite interested. Obviously, it's wonderful when you come across these kind of ancient nuggets that are sort of glowing in there, these things which are still there and still finding their way through it. And that, to me, is priceless. But actually, I'm quite interested in the whole kind of context of this and why people are still singing. And to me, kind of the tragedy is that one reason, if there is any danger, is because people don't sing anymore. I mean, my granddad always had a mouth organ in the top pocket, and the drop of a hat, he'd whip his mouth organ out and he'd play a tune. And that's what we did. You know, I know it sounds like old corny. In those days, we made our own entertainment, but actually, it's very true.
It's one of how we're kind of bouncing off each other here. We bring up SoundCloud, Facebook, MySpace, all these kind of, these extraordinary institutions that one can vilify for, in some ways, possibly being the death of self-made entertainment. And I think the wonderful time that we're at is actually these can be tools to help perpetuate the craft. These are all crafts. Some of the people are not their songs are not great, but the way they sing them is wonderful. And I think or the way they tell the story is so brilliant. The story itself was actually not all that, but it's the embellishment, the gilding of it is so wonderful. And that as an ability is something that needs to be passed on. Not just about it's not just about the grain of sand, but it's the pearl around it. And I agree with you. I think, Cecil Sharp, Baring Gould, they were as much noted for the music they didn't collect, the songs they rejected for one reason, because they didn't fit into their criteria. And, they did what they could, as much as they could in their time. At the moment, to say no to something now because we don't feel it's valid is a very dangerous concept in some ways, because a 10-year-old girl singing Adele today, in 100 years from now, might be a fascinating thing for the anthropologists and ethnomusicologists of then. It amazes me at that idea. It's possible.
Yeah, less of an interest for me, I have to say. Anyway.
Anything else that you guys, questions that you have? Hand up.
Yes, just this conversation is really interesting, and I'm kind of thinking we're talking very much about us going to them. And yet you're saying that there is a great deal of interest, a kind of changing attitude within traveller communities to their own music, and they want it to be recorded. So I'm wondering, what's the potential for something like this happening within the gypsy or traveller communities, where people are talking about collecting their own songs from their own people? I mean, I think what the collective is doing is great, but nevertheless, it is very much one group of people going to another, rather than springing up within that community. So I'm just wondering how you see that kind of thing developing. Is that something that is collective might kick off, or is it happening that you don't know about, or what?
Well, that's interesting, actually. I think.
Can I make one last plea? Please, if you're speaking, please.
Me too. Sorry. Okay, I'm just as guilty. I'd just say we weren't supposed to be in this hall, but the Zumba class has moved us. I'm terribly sorry. Stand up, okay, and apologise. I'm so sorry. Right.
No, I think you're right. It's a good question. I mean, I think the thing is that many travellers are interested in their own traditions and collecting from them. Stanley Robertson, who's the father of the Robertson that's coming today, he himself was employed on a 3-year contract with the Elphinstone Institute in Aberdeen in order to give him some money and enable him to spend time going and collecting from his own family. And I think this kind of thing it can happen. I don't know how much it does happen. And certainly there are events that have happened in Scotland which are specifically aimed at traveller communities, bringing them together. I'm involved in running annually in May a traditional singing weekend where we always have, or have always had, traveller singers coming to it. And you know, I think it's the integration, passing on the tradition by getting the singers in front of a public and in front of their own community as well is a great idea. How much it happens, I don't know.
I just might make some...
Thomas McCarthy, the singer who will be here tonight, he actually goes around and collects songs. I mean, he is an Irish traveller, and he is coming here, so in a way, it's kind of like, you know, it's not just an us and them. That's kind of breaking down a little bit.
I think it's quite a lot of interesting points as well, because I really quite like being oppositional in some ways, because there's lots of things which are taken for granted about what needs to be done in various contexts. And I think that when I was doing some work with Gypsy poets and Roma poets in Prague and in the UK, when Romany language first started getting written down, there were fears by a lot of by some people that this was becoming solidified. When you have an oral culture, a culture that doesn't use the written word, doesn't use recordings, it is slippery, it moves, it changes, it continuously develops, it updates itself. It's always on the move, it's transient, it's just like movement itself. When you start writing stuff down, they become facts, so they become how things are to be done. And there have been dangers in the past that actually this is the right way to do it. I mean, certainly when I got involved, and probably quite a few you may well recall in days gone by, you know, there was a right way and a wrong way to sing a song. Thankfully, all those things have kind of hopefully passed through, you know. But again, I mean, to what extent then do we, once you start writing stuff down and recording it, there can be another point of view to say, well, actually, what you've done, you've ossified that. Actually, there's a danger people will come back and say, that's the right way to do it. Well, actually, just leave it alone, as Sam's discovered and said Peter himself, actually, these songs are still being sung without being recorded. So, in a sense, you know, to what extent is one becoming sort of curatorial, I suppose, about this stuff? So, I think there's actually a lot of discussion, which is quite interesting to have around that subject. I don't think there's any right or wrong with it either. There's no answers.
I'd just like to turn your question on its head and say, as well as getting collecting projects going within Gypsy Traveller communities, maybe also begin our collecting with the communities we've come from and asking our parents and grandparents what they might know.
Yeah, I think it's important to be clear that you will hear a lot about Gypsy and Traveller communities today, and that is a lot of what Sam and I as individuals and then together have worked on. But that there is a much broader scope, and as we get to know you guys in the course of today, hopefully we'll get an idea of what you might be interested in collecting if you're not already out there recording or finding material. And there are no boundaries that we've set, so we'd love to kind of have our preconceptions challenged and hear about other communities that you might be interested in working with, or individuals. Maybe it's your mum or your granny or your next door neighbour, whatever. That there's absolute scope for that as well. Just to clear that one.
I was just going to add a general perspective from sort of sound archive and sound relation that there's a much more stronger move now towards collaborative work. You know, in the past you go and point microphones at people, but now you work with communities for them, find out how you make it locally relevant, do they want it, stuff like this. And there's a stronger move towards that. So one of the case studies I'll talk about, an archive of music from South Africa, local communities didn't even know it existed. Their elders had been recorded 50 years ago, but the moment you empowered artists and children and elders to use it and use it on their own terms, feel like it was theirs, things happened. You know, but those resources had to be shared. And I also work as a lecturer in music and anthropology. Nearly every student I have that goes out somewhere gets asked to get involved in archiving in some way today. You know, like whether it be in Nepal, Ghana, Gambia, wherever they go, they come as a student from Oxford and they tend to get drawn into, you know, can you help us archive, curate, things like this as well. So it's a lot of this is happening and in lots of different case studies, not just the traveller communities.
Yeah. Well, I think to just kind of sum this up as well and put it into a bit of context, there's an idea here that we are like gem hunting. We're going out looking for these rarities, and I think it's kind of you'll very clear that it's not a case of that. It's really a case of us widening our peripheral vision to that, to what's out there. That when you do, as I've experienced and said, and James and all of us, that it's everywhere. It's ubiquitous, this culture, and sometimes it's closer and more local than any of us ever thought. And it's about stepping into that world, stepping out of one comfort zone and entering in. The relationships I've made have been not just about, can I record you? They've become me joining families almost, and me developing new friends and relationships that I will live with for the rest of my life. So it's, I think, you know, these are about us going on individual journeys, and bringing our own interests, but they shape our lives, and they'll shape your lives, and they've shaped my life. And I think that's what makes them so wonderful and exciting. If it's all right, Derek, we're going to do a meet-up later on. There are so many questions. We are already 10 minutes over, and I'd like to move on to the next step of this day. Thank you, all of you, for coming and sharing this. This is kind of, I hope, do you all feel kind of invigorated and curious and puzzled of where to go next? James is going to stay in here, and then Paddy and Amy and Laura are going to go into, where are you going to go into the top hall? I think we're going to take you into the top hall because it's warmer and there is no Zumba class in there. If you want to do the Zumba class, you stay down in the lower hall. They'll be finishing around now. I apologise for that. It's great. What I will say, have a great day. Please feed back to us what you feel. There is on the back of your sheets a kind of feedback form. This is very much in a formative process, so what you tell us privately, one-to-one, group-wise, is really important for us to hear. The next stage of the collective is still solidifying, and it is being shaped by your voices. So please do, if you can, feedback anything that you feel, practical or on a wider level. Have a great day. We're going to have a lunch break. There will be soup served. I think you can buy your tokens for soup at the desk at some point later. I don't quite know how it's working. If you don't want soup, there's so much fruit and veg and food down on the high street as well if you want to catch some air. And then we have the interview with Frida and then the concert later on where we're going to have some entertainment, which is ultimately what this is about in many ways. Thank you all very much. We'll have like a few minutes, just change around, gather yourselves, and let's say we'll start in about 10 minutes for the next session. Is that all right? Thank you.